Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Happy Wednesday. Welcome back, Heat Seekers. It is midweek. Thursday night games are coming up tomorrow night, and we're going to be here to help you tonight with some studs and duds for this weekend slate of games. With that being said, first and foremost, we want to thank you guys for everything you're doing. I know we just surpassed 2,700 here on YouTube, so definitely hit that like, subscribe, the notification icon. Let's get to 3,000. Share this with everybody you know. Help us get there, and we appreciate everything you're doing. With that being said, Bryce, how are you, my friend?
I'm always good, Brad. Thanks. Cody, how you doing?
It's always good with you.
I'm doing well. Looking forward to my Bengals in prime time. It doesn't happen very much for us, so I'm excited to see what they got in a very, very winnable game. So
the way things look, it's kind of a tale of two teams with Cincy being very consistent in certain areas and Jacksonville being all over the place. So it'll be a fun game tomorrow night. I know a lot of folks are kind of up and down with what we've had the first two Thursday nights. We had a great week one. Week two had some value. Week three was a bit of a letdown with Carolina and Houston. And then this week, I think, will be a bounce back. It'll be a fun game to watch. If nothing else with those young quarterbacks and those young offenses. So we've got lots of news and notes to go over. I know that we talked last night about the Josh Gordon signing, so we're not going to talk a ton about it other than to say we dropped a video here on YouTube if you want to know what the team's consensus feelings are. And if you want to hear us talk about it on last night's show, go watch last night's show. Today's news and notes, we got a lot of guys returning from IR. So we got at least Curtis Samuel, Rashad Bateman, Nikhil Harry. Cody, how do you feel about these guys and then the other pieces of guys returning from IR? Is there anyone that I didn't mention here that bears bringing up for fantasy relevance?
I don't think there's anyone really of significance. I think these three guys are the guys, and Nikhil Harry, as we were talking pre-show, might not even be one of those guys. With Curtis Samuel, it concerns me that offensive Terry McLaurin's not even producing to the stature that we have come to expect. I don't really expect Curtis Samuel to come in there and command a huge target share and put up startable stats. I want to wait and see on him. I think Rashad Bateman is absolutely the guy here that you want to probably want to see what you have here, but I think he's going to, provide that support for that offense that is desperately needed. Like we kind of saw in that Detroit game. I know you're a Patriots fan, Bryce. So what do you think about Nikhil Harry?
I don't know what to think. We're the receiving core is not good. Everyone outside of Jacoby Meyer is kind of disappointing this year. And Jacoby Meyer is not suited to be the best receiver on a team. He's just kind of that second, preferably third option that you would really be comfortable with on a roster. So Nikhil Harry gives you the size that seems like that Patriot offense is lacking because, with these rookie quarterbacks, teams are bringing a lot of pressure. And in those situations, veteran quarterbacks with a little more experience like to throw it up to their big guys that can kind of get them 50-50 balls. And there's no one on New England that scares any defenses. So Nikhil Harry gives that option, but until I see something, because he's had a disappointing career so far, but he's got all the excuses that kind of give him that, where it was his rookie year and Brady kind of really didn't get a connection with him. And then Cam last year, who was horrible. So the only person I'm really excited to come back is Curtis Samuel. And that's mostly because of my Terry McLaurin shares, hoping that maybe he can provide a presence that would maybe take a little bit of pressure off him. Because when he's on the field, he makes plays and he's a solid number 2 option, like we saw in Carolina. So I like Rashad Bateman as well, but I feel like it's the Hollywood Brown show, except he did have 2 drop touchdown passes this last week. So maybe that gives Bateman an opportunity to kind of step in and gain Lamar's trust. Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, I put all 3 of these names on here because I think from a redraft perspective, you want to keep an eye on all 3 of these guys. I don't think any of them really, unless you're really hurting at wide receiver, I think you need to just watch these names, not necessarily jump all over them because first and foremost, Curtis Samuel is not had a lot of time with Tyler Heineke, so we don't know if they've got that connection. Fitzpatrick I wouldn't have been concerned about, but Heineke is a lot more of an unknown commodity at quarterback. So is Curtis Samuel on the same page with them? who knows? Rashad Bateman, same thing with Lamar. Like Lamar is still working on developing as a quarterback, as a passer. Rashad Bateman needs time to develop because he's a rookie. As much as Rashad Bateman of this group is my favorite player, I don't know that he's ready to be fantasy relevant yet because now he's, basically getting to game one of the regular season. Nikhil Harry, I think, would be the one that could return the most value the earliest because New England needs a receiver outside of Jacoby, like you said with Jacoby Myers.
Right.
This offense, if you can get somebody to back the defenses up a little bit, that's going to make things better for them all around. I know the next piece of news is going to be about New England as well, but they need to make defenses worry about the passing game, and they haven't been able to do that. Myers is getting a ton of targets and a ton of receptions for PPR, but they need somebody that's going to take the top off the defense, go up, kind of attack the ball above the rim, that kind of player. And Nikhil Harry can be that. So of the three names, if you need a wide receiver, you go with Curtis Samuel because he's the safest one that's produced. If you're looking to stash one for upside, Nikhil Harry, but Rashad Bateman's my favorite of the three. So
I think ceiling wise, Bateman's going to be that guy. I think that if you watch any of these Ravens games so far, and even if you just look at the box scores, the offense is clearly struggling in Baltimore, and Bateman could give that extra option that looks like they need to me. Even like you said, like Hollywood Brown's having a tough time catching the ball a little bit. Mark Andrews getting bottled up. I think they're really struggling without being able to run the ball the way that they're accustomed to. Not having J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards is, I think, really killing that offense. And I'm not sure if, Greg Roman was, prepared for that at all. Not that he necessarily should have been, but I'm really excited to see Rashad Bateman in that offense. Out of the three, I think he has the highest ceiling and could provide the most upside.
Absolutely. If he gets up to speed quick enough, then for sure. I mean, he's super talented. Next piece of news and notes, back to New England. James White, the hip, very similar hip injury to Fitzpatrick, which I haven't very rarely heard of this hip injury. I mean, it seems like, all of a sudden everybody's got the hip supplication, however you pronounce it. He's out for the season with the hip injury. What does this do to the passing game? Because now they have Ramondre Stevenson, who is basically a Damian Harris type player. That role is kind of what he does. You don't see him in the passing game as much. I mean, is it the Brandon Bolden show? Did they go out and trade for a Marlon Mack or somebody? Bryce, this is your team. This is your team. Yeah. What are you doing? What is happening there in New England?
This is devastating for Mac Jones of all people. It sucks for, fantasy owners because a lot of people probably don't have a ton of running back depth, and you probably had James White on your bench week 1, maybe even week 2, and he almost seemed like he was going to give you a solid floor and a little bit of running back depth for maybe those bye weeks coming up here soon enough. There's nobody else that can remotely close that's going to catch the ball out of the backfield. And like you said, Brad, I think for now it's the Brandon Bolden show until I see him go out and get somebody, because he was going in on those downs where it was obvious passing downs, which was pretty much the whole second half after the first play. So, yeah, I think so. J.J. Taylor is probably the person I'd look to see them get more involved. He's a speedier, smaller back. I don't know. I haven't really seen enough of how much how good he is out of the backfield when it comes to running routes and catching the ball. But it seems like his, style of play would best suit him to maybe fit that role. So I'm probably looking at him for the future, but I bet it's going to be a little bit of mix of him and Brandon Bolden this upcoming week, Sunday night against Tampa Bay. And they will be throwing a lot in that game.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to. They're not going to be able to run the ball. I don't think there's any fantasy significance from this, regardless of anything, unless – the only guy that I think could make, and this would make tons of sense, but you'd still have to see what happens. I believe Duke Johnson is available now. I could be wrong on that, but I think that would be a phenomenal grab. Makes tons of sense. He can do all the things that they need him to do, that they need someone to do, that James White could do. This changes nothing, in my opinion, for Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris. Like you said, J.J. Taylor might be that guy, but if they do go out and get a guy like Duke Johnson, I think that would be a great grab.
Yeah.
And it would really, really, really round out that offense, as best as it, has been realistically. It's not going to really change it too much fantasy wise, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean
So-
James White. Oh, sorry, I was
No,
saying
go ahead.
James White probably will not step foot on a football field as a Patriot again. So they got to find something. I would guess that they are either going to look for some youth out there in the waiver wire, or they're going to try and give JJ Taylor that role.
So if Brandon Boldman is the guy, so I want to look at it two different ways. So if Brandon Boldman is the guy, what do you see the production being the rest of the season? Is he fantasy relevant if he's the James White role? And same for JJ Taylor. Which one of these guys do you think gives the most upside for fantasy owners to consider either going and getting and looking at or rostering, I should say? And which one of them do you really think is going to do it? I'll shoot that to you first, Cody.
In my opinion, it'd be JJ Taylor. You have to be super, super deep. At minimum a 14-team league with a deep bench. In my opinion, I don't see too much changing. From a fantasy perspective. Again, maybe Duke Johnson if they went out and got him, maybe. But even then, I'm still probably just starting Damian Harris as a flex guy. I don't think Damian Harris is an RB1. Maybe not even RB2. He's basically a flex. His floor is his ceiling is extremely capped. So if anyone, JJ Taylor, but I'm probably avoiding it unless someone has a blow up game or something like that, which I don't particularly see, especially not against the Bucks. So yeah, what do you think, Bryce, about your team?
Yeah, I mean, trying to figure out what New England will do at running back is impossible for the fans. I'm sure all the coaches outside of Belichick and Josh McDaniels have no clue as well. I mean, this is a redraft stream, so I agree. There's nothing worth moving on your roster more than likely to even grab either of these guys because it could very well be neither of them. They might just run the ball forever and then they might do a Cordero Patterson and find some wide receiver they want to put in the backfield on passing downs. I have no clue. I'm not moving anyone off my bench to go pick up either of those guys. So I don't see much fantasy relevance coming out of this at this moment, but I could be very wrong.
The only thing I do see potentially is them trying to lean more, which they should be doing anyways, is lean more on those tight ends. You picked them up, you paid them all that money. Not that they haven't been getting targeted, and I know Jonnu Smith had a tough week last week, but I think that's the change, is lean more on those tight ends where you can just, extensions of the passing game. The running game, little dump offs and drags and stuff like that to those two guys. That's the fantasy relevance or significance that I see with this potentially, but not at the running back position.
Yeah, and a friend of the show, Jaws, I see in multiple leagues so far, guys putting in waiver claims for JJ Taylor. I think Brandon Bolden feels like the one that Belichick will go with just because that's his guy. He's had him around for so long, but I wouldn't roster him. I mean, that just doesn't feel – it feels wrong rostering that guy because it give you one game and then that's it. So the one thing that I do find interesting is, Ramondre does look like he catches the ball pretty well when given the opportunity. So as much as I think that he's the Damian Harris role player, maybe they flex him out and start doing some of that with him and letting him catch the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah, he looks like he can play. It's just a matter of getting that opportunity. They called him out in the preseason, then he went off for 3 touchdowns. So I don't know why they're not giving him more opportunity to at least prove that he can't do it. There's a lot of guys, even in the NFL, in any level, there's a lot of guys that are just gamers, and they just, they show up when it's game time. And maybe that's the type of guy he is. Maybe he's not a practice guy. Hard to say. I don't know, but it just seems like they're just really not willing to give him an opportunity. And I'm not really sure why personally.
It's because he fumbled on his second carry of week 1. Yeah, that's exactly why Bill Belichick, for some reason, will take you out and then sit you for 2 weeks. Apparently, I don't get it. But
Bruce Arians keeps doing it with Rojo. So how is
that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Rick would agree, I'm sure.
No, I'm just saying that coaches, we're seeing more coaches do that. You get in the doghouse very quickly because they want you to be perfect.
Especially when there's other talent, out, on the bench or whatever that's not giving it up. So
especially the running back position, which is, dime a dozen interchangeable at this point in football, not just fantasy, but in football in general.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, all right. So those are the 2 pieces of pertinent news and notes that have happened in the last 24 hours that I thought we need to talk about. That being said, so the main topic tonight, we want to talk about some of the guys that we see as kind of studs and duds in week 4. So I want to start focusing mostly on tomorrow night's games because a lot of you guys watching this are trying to get your lineup set for Thursday night. Obviously, I also want to talk about ones that could potentially be for the weekend as well, but we definitely want to start with tomorrow night. So Bryce, who are some guys that you think are studs tomorrow that you need to have in lineups, as well as guys that you need to keep out of your lineups in the Cincy versus Jacksonville game?
Some guys I'm keeping in my lineups are both the Bengals receivers that are active, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase. I think at this point it's pretty obvious with Chase. He's produced all 3 weeks so far this year. He's a red zone target. He's a deep ball threat. So there's not much to say more than him other than he's already been consistent. Tyler Boyd's got the doors kicked wide open with Higgins being out. It seemed like the first couple weeks with Higgins in there, he was getting kind of those targets we were seeing Tyler Boyd get in the past. Joe Burrow leaning on Higgins, and with Higgins out, Boyd, had a solid week this past week. So I'm definitely having those guys in my lineup, along with Joe Mixon, of course. You drafted him high enough, probably more than likely you're running back 2, maybe you're running back 1. You got to have him in there. And I expect Jacksonville to be losing this week. So I'm going to have James Robinson in with his out of the backfield ability, along with Marvin Jones Jr. Those are the guys I'm definitely plugging in my lineups this week. And I'm probably avoiding DJ Chark Jr. and LaVisca, depending on what the rest of my team looks like. Just doesn't seem like he's producing on the amount of targets he's getting. What about you, Cody?
Yeah, I'm actually in exactly the same boat. Being a Bengals fan too, when I did my Bengals episode, that's exactly what I said is Tyler Boyd is going to be the one hurting from the Jamar Chase drafting, not T. Higgins. And that's what we saw in the first 2 weeks. Higgins caught a touchdown in both games. Higgins is out last week. Boyd catches a touchdown. Jamar Chase is a wide receiver 1 in any format at this point. And I think he will be for the rest of the season. So you definitely are going to be plugging him in. I think he's going to be basically matchup proof. So you start him regardless.
Did you say was that Higgins you said?
Chase, Jamar Chase.
Oh, Chase. Okay.
Yeah. So Higgins is obviously out,
Right.
which is going to obviously keep Tyler Boyd in that conversation. So he's probably going to be a touchdown a target monster type of guy. Yeah, Mixon. I being a Bengals fan, I've always said I don't love the way he runs. I really don't. There's way too much east-west with Joe Mixon. He's always trying to bust off a 50-yard touchdown, just get 4 yards if that's all that's there. It's really frustrating as a Bengals fan and as a fantasy owner if you are one. But this week, you're good. You're good. Especially like you said, you're going to start him regardless with where you drafted him. Mm-hmm. And then those 2 other guys you mentioned, Chark and Chenault, are going to be, you're going to have to get a big play from one of them. And if that doesn't happen, then they're going to be, 6 points or less type of thing. I mean, very well, they could throw up 20 points. Absolutely. But it's going to be on a big play, at least, 40-yard touchdown, something like that is going to have to happen for one of those 2 guys to be, fantasy relevant. I think the volume goes to Marvin Jones Jr. And then with James Robinson, we saw how many we saw how many balls Najee Harris caught, against the Bengals last week. Completely different type of a team. I get all that, but Robinson's going to be in there on passing downs. So he's going to have that high floor. If he chips in a touchdown, then, he's going to be a top 10 running back for the week type of thing. So yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. There's pretty much nothing I would argue there. How about you, Brad?
I almost feel like any of these skill position players have the potential this week to have double-digit game. I don't want to say that these Jacksonville receivers are studs outside of Marvin Jones. For those that are watching at some point, we have our tiered rankings up here on YouTube so you can see who we put at the wide receiver positions. But I think that either Chark or Chenault will probably produce a good week for you. So if you're hurting at receiver, one of those 2 guys I think will give you something, because I think Cincinnati's in the 20s against receivers. I think it's like 20, 21, 22 when it comes to their rank against opposing receivers. I mean, the defense is good and getting better, but there's still room for these guys to be productive if you need help there. I don't put him in the studs category outside of Marvin Jones, though. But everything you guys said is absolutely accurate. I mean, this is going to be a fun game to watch, but there's going to be plenty of fantasy production to be had. I even think, if you need to start a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence will be a startable quarterback this week. If in a pinch, obviously Burrow's the one to start here. All my Burrow shares are fired up, and I'm chopping at the bit to see him put up 25, 30 points on this defense. But hopefully we keep seeing the same production on James Robinson, because James Robinson was getting mistreated by Urban and that coaching staff. I think we saw last week that James Robinson is the best back on that roster, and they need to get him involved. Fat, what's up?
Even with drafting Travis Etienne was kind of a little disrespectful, I thought.
Yeah, it made no sense.
I do love Etienne. I get it. I get what he can do. I get all that. But, man, James Robinson is absolutely the real deal if given the opportunity. Even if the offense or team isn't very good, he can produce, as we saw last year. So he's absolutely the real deal. I just think they need to buy in completely and give him the ball 20 times a game.
Do you think Etienne could ever get top 5 fantasy production like James Robinson had?
No.
Because that was the issue.
Especially after a torn Achilles. Sorry.
I mean, I'm just saying, James Robinson proved it. Produced in a crappy offense, top 5 production. I don't know that Etienne will ever get top 5. I mean, I could see him being a back-end RB1 for sure, but James Robinson should have been on the field, as often as possible this year. What about you, Bryce? Do you think? I mean, I threw it.
I would say no, but since he's got that connection with Lawrence, I wouldn't be surprised if for some reason Robinson's there, absolutely not. But if he's not, I could see Etienne being a PPR monster, just because if Lawrence, he has that ability to read through the progression, and he has probably no problem checking it down to a guy that he's been doing it to for years. I didn't like Etienne even when I watched him in college. I thought he was like kind of average. He just excelled because he was on such a good team. Like we see that a lot with running backs in college. So I just think in that system, if you can catch the ball out of the backfield, you can be a top 5, receiver or top 5 running back prospect, just because of how bad that Jacksonville is. They're down every game and they have to throw it, 50 times a game, it seems like. So it almost seems like anybody could be on a team like that, but I like James Robinson's talent way better than I like Travis Etienne's.
I definitely think that they try to slow this game down, the Jags. I absolutely think they try to slow this game down and run the ball early and often as much as they can. They got to try to stay in ball games like the Detroit Lions. Sorry to say, Brad, you gotta stay in the game as long as you can. What I thought the Patriots would do as well. Just stay in the game as long as you can, run the ball, play good defense, and see what happens. And if you're there in the fourth quarter, crazy things happen in the NFL. We see it every single week.
Well, yes, absolutely. But these teams Detroit against Baltimore, that should have never been that close. Like, Baltimore made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and Detroit just capitalized up until Justin Tucker decided to break records. So if the team doesn't go in there and shoot themselves in the foot, then these games should. Like tomorrow night, Cincinnati could easily lose that game if they shoot themselves in the foot. If they look past Jacksonville because they're 2-1, and Jacksonville looks like a cake, kind of a cakewalk type game. That's my concern. They just need to focus on each game and just destroy this team and get it out of the way and give us lots of fantasy production.
Yeah, I don't think the Bengals are going to be in a position to overlook literally anybody.
It's too tough too.
Oh yeah,
I think
when you're the Bungles and all this, you're the laughing stuff of the league a little bit. And yes, I'm a Bengals fan. They're not in the business of overlooking anybody.
Absolutely. All right. So as we get to the weekend's game, so obviously, we're past Thursday. Is there somebody that maybe we aren't talking about that we should be talking about as kind of that must start this weekend? Is there somebody that catches your eye or gets you excited, or somebody that as you're submitting your lineups tonight and tomorrow, you have to have him in that we're just not talking about? I'll start with you, Bryce. Maybe throw out a couple of guys or a guy or two that you really think are must start as kind of studs for you.
I don't necessarily have a lot of guys that I would consider a sleeper, but I've got a couple of names on here. I'll just mention 3 really quickly Two of them I think will definitely have a comeback week, and you probably drafted them high. And Jonathan Taylor's one of them, and then Calvin Ridley is the other. Calvin Ridley's against Washington, and Washington's DBs and safeties, I don't know if they're playing football or what they're doing. They're just allowing tons of yards and tons of touchdowns. They look horrible. So look for Calvin Ridley to jump back this week. And then Jonathan Taylor. Peyton Barber ran for over 100 yards on Miami's defense. Peyton Barber. So Jonathan Taylor should be able to – they should be leading that game ideally, especially with Jacoby Brissett in. Yeah, Rick, you're right. Mike Williams at this point is easy start every week at this point. So those two, and then a kind of a guy maybe that might be on your bench in a redraft, depending on what your roster looks like. I know it probably sounds like I'm a homer, but Jacoby Myers is my slam dunk here for a great floor. He might see 15 targets in this game. I see Tampa Bay jumping out early, and if New England can somewhat keep it close, I don't ever see him gaining the lead unless it's a field goal on the first drive. Jacoby Meyer has an excellent floor this week. Those are kind of the three guys this week that I think are going to be studs. Cody?
Yeah, I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. He's one of my guys as well, and you could probably throw Nyheim Hines in there as well. I think DeAndre Swift, we've been talking a fair amount about him, and that Chicago entire team looks pretty god awful. So even Jared Goff could be a guy that you think about starting. I think both of the Browns running backs, obviously they both look good last week, and Minnesota is hurting again on defense. Again, Baker Mayfield could be another guy. Jonathan Peoples-Jones, some sleepers that I really like. Well, not really a sleeper, but finally a breakout candidate, Robert Woods. I think that this is going to probably be the game that he breaks out. Not that that's any secret. A lot of people are talking about it, and I definitely agree with that. But a sleeper that I like, and I've been super, super high on all offseason, all draft, and even during the season, and a guy that I think is going to break out this week and have kind of his game is Terrace Marshall Jr. for the Panthers. I really like him, and obviously that's going to be a tough matchup where they're going to have to throw the ball. Obviously, we all know Christian McCaffrey's out. That Dallas defense has looked pretty good against the run, so I feel like they're going to have to throw the ball. Sam Darnold's look completely capable. Terrace Marshall's look like the wide receiver 2 on that team. Dan Arnold is now gone. Tommy Tremble looks good. But yeah, I think this is the game that Terrace Marshall, potentially could get you. I mean, obviously I'm talking ceiling here, but he could get you 100 yards and a touchdown, I think, against the Cowboys this week.
I like it. Those are intriguing for sure. All right. So on the flip side now, Bryce, who are some guys that you definitely don't want to play? Who are your duds for this week? Some guys you're trying to stay as far away from as possible.
When we went over the studs and duds, I went over some guys for the season, but for this week's games, I'm probably I had one on here and I can't remember where he's at. I do not like Chubba Hubbard for this week. So a lot of people are picking him up off the waiver wire, and he probably might see pretty good volume, but Dallas Cowboys are perfectly equipped for stopping running backs out of the backfield. They have fast linebackers that can cover, and their defensive line, even without DeMarcus Lawrence, has looked pretty darn good this week. That's the main one that I think a lot of people are grabbing off the waiver wire this week, and they're plugging in his lineup, and I would not be surprised for him to kind of throw you out single digits this week.
Yeah, and the Cowboys are big up the middle as well, so that helps with the fast linebackers and decent safeties. So I definitely agree with that one. Two guys I'm looking at, Saquon Barkley. I've always not always sorry, but this season, the beginning of this season, coming into the season, I just think next season will be the year for Saquon Barkley, much like Dalvin Cook. So this week against the Saints on the road, I think that's a tough matchup. They got a good defense in general, but a quite good run defense. I think that I mean, you can't exactly sit Saquon Barkley,
Right.
But I guess temper your expectations. David Montgomery is another guy that you might think about not starting him, to be honest, even though he does have that probably second round, depending on where you drafted, second, third round draft capital. But that offensive line is just so god awful that, and if Justin Fields isn't, what we're hoping he is, they're going to blitz him. They're going to blitz him all game, just like the Browns did last week. And with how poor that offensive line is, if they're in the backfield before he even gets the handoff, what are you going to do? And I don't think Justin Fields can do anything about that either. So that's another guy that again, these are two guys that you might be forced into starting anyways. But yeah, like you might be forced into starting them, but man, I just do not like it. Obviously DFS, avoid them completely, but those are two guys that I'm, not Barkley, but I'm potentially thinking about not starting Montgomery, if I'm being honest. Luckily, I don't think I really own him anywhere. I'd have to look again, but
and I think against Detroit, like this is a bit of a get right game for some of these guys, like Allen Robinson. Somebody I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, like, oh, do we dare think about sitting a guy like that who, that game against Cleveland, people are worried about, and Monty's the same way. I'm like, no, you start your studs. When you look at like the PFF grades for Detroit, I mean, their pass rushing grade, they're top 10 in the league right now for pass rushing. They can get after the quarterback pretty well, but their run defense is, kind of bottom third of the league. So I think David Montgomery is still going to produce a very viable fantasy, kind of, even if it's at worst case back end RB1 type week. I don't think it's that way because they really don't have anything else to worry about. I mean, Darrell Williams gets involved a little bit. I mean, Tariq Cohen's still on the roster, but Monty's the guy. So I think he still gives you value. I wouldn't be so worried about that. And I wouldn't be so worried about A-Rob. I wouldn't be so worried about, some of these guys. Justin Fields is the only one that I'd be really, truly worried about, because if he is the starter and they go after him like Cleveland did, and Nagy keeps the, handcuffs him and ruins the game plan, yeah, absolutely, Sully. He's in a terrible spot right now, but you can't sit him. I mean,
yeah, that's where it's at with Montgomery too, and that's the other thing is I don't think I can't trust Nagy and Bill Lazor. I just don't trust their play calling. I don't.
Nagy needs to give the play. Nagy needs to give the play calling up. Like that's the problem. He can't be involved.
Yeah, I think that's been proven, but some guys just can't do that. So I don't know.
So there you go. So there are some studs, there's some duds, and a little bit of everything in between. With that being said, we are past 10 o'clock now. So let's get to some questions because I know we have some. Here we go. All right. So we are going to start up here at the top with South Bay Raider. Welcome. I don't know that I've seen you in the chat before. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. Galladay stash or trade. So it doesn't have any context, so it doesn't matter if this is redraft dynasty. What are you doing with him in both formats, Bryce?
I'm trying to probably trade Kenny Galladay. It already looks like he's frustrated with his role in that offense. I don't like Daniel Jones as a quarterback that when it comes to having a good receiver, I don't think he really utilizes guys like Kenny Galladay. I saw that Sterling Shepard came off the field. Was there any extent to his injury?
He didn't practice today. Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard didn't practice today.
Yep.
Okay, so that whole wide receiver core is beat up because Galladay was on limited snaps last week. So, I mean, it's like I would trade him, but I would have to get some value because he does have a lot of upside because he is so talented. And now with those wide receivers hurt, it's funny that you mentioned this guy because this is one of my duds so far this season, throughout the season. But it's like I don't know what to do with him because I probably drafted him as my wide receiver 2, hopefully my wide receiver 3. And he's disappointed so far where he's probably made his way to your bench. So unless I'm getting good enough value and getting a guy that I think I could start that I think is going to outproduce him, I'm probably just going to stash him.
Yeah, I like that. I would be looking for. I would definitely like to trade him. I absolutely despise Jason Garrett as a play caller in the NFL. I think his offense is suited for 1998, maybe, and even then it might be outdated. I don't trust him. And then we're not really like Daniel Jones potentially. I think he will be, but there's potential that he's not even the quarterback on this team. So I don't know. And you're right. I think Golladay is absolutely frustrated. Obviously, Kadarius Toney is frustrated. So it seems like that there's a lot of disarray with that whole team. Even throughout the preseason, there was a bunch of talk about, I don't know what it was, Joe Judge being too strict or something like that. I can't remember the exact details of it, but
starting a fight club during training camp.
Yeah. Like it's tough to, some guys just have a tough time, not controlling, but just, I guess talking to and relating to grown men that are also millionaires, that are also world-class athletes, all this kind of stuff. And maybe that's Jason Garrett and Joe Judge. I don't know. But the biggest problem is Jason Garrett for me in that offense. That's by far the biggest problem. And yeah, if Kenny Golladay is already frustrated and regretting signing that contract, what was it, 4 years or something like that? That's concerning. Plus, I'm a little concerned about the injury bug that's been, has bitten him for a little bit. It starts to get concerning. Even a trade that I made that I'm going to bring up a little bit later. Once it starts creeping in and potentially guys start compensating on the field, and once your brain is telling you to be concerned about your right leg or whatever it is, that's not a good spot. And I'm not saying that Golladay is there, but there's potential of that.
Yeah, I think in a redraft situation, I think Golladay is a guy that you want to have on your roster to see if he's really getting the top targets. If Shepard and Slayton are out for an extended period of time, then he's obviously your de facto top option there. Like when you look at Daniel Jones's grades currently, he grades out pretty well so far this season. From a fantasy perspective, he's giving you good production. I cannot speak to what the team's going to do long term because I'm not entirely sure this coaching staff and some of the front office are there after this season. I mean, the team just hasn't been producing. So I'm not going to go to the long term, but Kenny Golladay, the player, is very talented. He can produce. He typically does better when you give him the ball further down the field, which I think is part of the issue that they've been having. Daniel Jones has not been doing as much of that. Yeah. So I would consider stashing him unless you get the right trade offer. I mean, right now, I've not seen, I was looking, while you guys were talking, I was looking for some trades, and I'm just not seeing a lot of trades where Kenny Golladay is getting moved for anything that makes sense. So if you have a trade where it makes sense to move him, then go ahead. But otherwise, you keep him on your roster because he's still a very talented receiver, and I don't know that you're going to get the return that you spent on him.
Yeah. He's a lot better when Matt Stafford's throwing to him.
I was just going to say the throws that Matt Stafford can make, Daniel Jones cannot make.
Yeah.
Throws.
A lot of people are better when Matt Stafford's throwing them the ball.
Yeah.
Oblad Fitness, welcome. Glad you're here. Brandon Cooks, Hollywood Brown, or Claypool as my flex. So let's pull up the schedule just to make sure we don't miss anything.
So I know Brandon Cooks has a tougher matchup, even though he's
getting peppered.
Seems like he's matchup proof, but I think it's got to be him, in my opinion. Now this kind of depends. So I think you could honestly put in Claypool, but I'm only going to put in Claypool if Deontay Johnson's not playing. And I know Deontay Johnson, I was reading today, was on limited practice, which usually when they're having a limited practice on Wednesday, you a lot of times see that they're going to play on Sunday. Because we kind of saw this last week that Claypool kind of took that Deontay Johnson role where he was getting like a lot of quick passes and way more targets rather than kind of that deeper ball receiver that we're used to seeing him. But Brandon Cooks, I mean, we've talked about him for a couple weeks now. I feel like whether it's on here or on the Sunday morning, this guy kind of gets overlooked every year, every week, and he just consistently produces a great floor and has a tremendous ceiling with his speed, his route running. He catches everything. I guess the only thing he doesn't have is size. So he kind of reminds me of a Steve Smith senior kind of player, just like the way he kind of holds himself on the field or his attitude and everything. So, and that guy was a producer his whole career as well. So I'm keeping in Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I'm still sticking with my guy, Brandon Cooks. We were super duper high on him last week, even in a tough matchup, and he ended up killing it. So hopefully some guys ended up starting him and listening to us and having a good start there. Matchup wise, I'm going with Brandon Cooks as well. Tre'Davious White is the only good corner on that team. Levi Wallace looked okay. I think he had a pick last week. But as far as volume is concerned, the Texans are going to get blown out. Absolutely, by the Bills. They're going to get blown out. So they're going to have to throw the ball even more than they did last week. I'm absolutely sticking with Brandon Cooks. And like Brad was saying last week, if you need him to slant, drag, go, whatever, stop and go, stuff like everything and anything, and he's going to get, 10 plus targets at a minimum. I don't see that for Hollywood Brown, that's for sure. Chase Claypool, I think, like you said, he needs that big play as well because he's not Deontay Johnson. He can't do that stuff. As we saw in the Bengals game, he's not the same style of receiver. He can't do those. He can't run those routes as crisp and get as open as Deontay Johnson can. So he needs to have that big play. And Ben Roethlisberger, you guys were talking about him last night, and I agree. He is god awful, and he doesn't even look like he can throw the ball right now. So a big play, deep threat, reliant type of a wide receiver. And you got a quarterback that can't throw the ball more than 20 yards, if that even, it's not a good recipe. So absolutely Brandon Cooks, in my opinion. Absolutely.
I would concur. 3 for 3, definitely Brandon Cooks. Guy is very, very much matchup proof because he gets peppered with targets. Jacob Hexamer, welcome to the chat. Not on topic, but I have a question. What is the best RB you think I could try and trade for, with trade paces being Deebo Samuel, Leonard Fournette, Josh Jacobs? I mean, you really, if you're literally going to offer Deebo and Jacobs, you should be able to target just about any of the running backs.
Swift, you've been talking about a lot. If you can get DeAndre Swift for that,
I think a lot of it depends on. Well, and I think a lot of it depends on the trade partner. So, do they need help at wide receiver, and they have enough at running back that they could stand to give you, because really what you're doing is you're trying to upgrade your RB1. I'm sure you drafted Josh Jacobs as your RB1 or right around your RB1. I would target one of those guys that are up there. DeAndre Swift would be one of them. I know Saquon's got a tough schedule, but Saquon's one of them that I think the value's dropped enough that you could probably get him for, a nice wide receiver 2-3 and a potential, RB2 with one upside if John Gruden stops being John Gruden. Chris
Carson might be another name that you could look at. Those two guys, Chris Carson and DeAndre Swift, would be guys that I would think about. I would throw Najee Harris in there, but he just blew up, so it might be a little tougher to get. So those two are the guys I would think in a vacuum. I mean, like you said, Brad, we don't know the details, but just pointing that out there in a vacuum, those two guys.
Yep. All right, Joey Neblas, welcome, my friend. Need 2 wide receivers this weekend. I've got Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Jones Jr. For me, Sutton is always at the top of my list. I think he's just so good. Robert Woods really should be the choice, but he isn't getting the same amount of action that Tyler Boyd and Marvin Jones is in their offenses. So I'm going to go out and say Marvin Jones and Cortland Sutton, and that's probably more for ceiling plays. But I could be wrong on the Marvin Jones. What do you guys think, Bryce?
I go the exact opposite of you. Cortland Sutton did have a great that first week the second week of the year, right?
Every week.
What did he put this last week?
Hold on, I'm pulling up the stats. I don't think he didn't get targeted much because they were ahead and they ran the ball more.
Right. That's
not going to be the case against Baltimore.
The Broncos are 3-0 and their opponents are 0-9, so it's not like they've had any competition yet this year. I think Brad, you did say with ceiling play. I guess I'd probably put in Sutton and Robert Woods for ceiling play. But I think that Robert Woods is due at this point. I mean, teams have got to know Cooper Kupp is the guy. They're going to start targeting him because he's always making big plays when it matters most. And Tyler Boyd tomorrow night might just get peppered. I mean, he absolutely has the potential to get 12 to 15 targets. Not saying he will, but that opportunity may be there. And if Jacksonville can even somewhat keep this game close, which is very, very much possible, he could be in all 4 quarters and see a good floor with the potential of a decent ceiling. I just like Robert Woods and Tyler Boyd here personally. I mean, all 4 of these guys are pretty close.
So it doesn't worry you with Robert Woods that he's really only getting, 4 targets, 9 targets, 6 targets, and he had 3 catches, 5 catches, 3 catches, and never gotten above 65 yards so far this year.
I mean, it's kind of worried me, but I think at this point, he, like I said, I think he's going to excel now as the real number 2 on that team. I think last year, coming into his performance last year, coming into this year, I think teams considered him their number 1 wide receiver with how he performed. I think he beat Kupp in every category, if I'm not mistaken, or at least he was pretty close in all of them.
They were super close. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why.
I just think he, at this point, he's kind of due. I mean, Cortland Sutton had one really good game. I guess your safest play would probably be Boyd and Jones Jr. But I just really like Boyd I like putting a floor guy in and then a ceiling guy. And I think Robert Woods has the highest ceiling, and then Tyler Boyd has the highest floor, personally.
What do you think?
Yeah, I called a due factor guy last week, Antonio Gibson, and he busted off a 73-yard touchdown, had 100 yards plus a touchdown. Robert Woods is my due factor guy this week. Absolutely. I think that's absolutely going to be a shootout between those two teams. And due factor. I think Robert Woods is absolutely the guy I would look at. The guy I would absolutely avoid is Sutton, which is the same guy I said last week when I said that I thought they would run the ball a ton against the Jets. They did. I thought Sutton would be a guy to avoid. Tim Patrick would be the guy to probably own. Got lucky and was right on that one. I think it's going to go the same way with the way the Detroit Lions ran the ball against the Baltimore Ravens and slowed the game down. And got that win. I think that's the mold that the Broncos are going to take into this game as well. The two-headed backfield that seems to be working. It's what they've been leaning on. I avoid Sutton personally. I go Robert Woods because I think he's due, and he does. I mean, he does have a high floor, and his ceiling is very high as well.
It's Cooper Kupp high, right? I mean, you would think
100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not easily, but he can absolutely do that.
It's not. I mean, it might be a little bit, but it could very well be the other guy because we've seen it already between them two, right?
The most likely guy to have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns out of these 4, in my opinion, is Robert Woods without question. So I put in Robert Woods. I avoid Sutton, and then I probably go Tyler Boyd as well. So I'm with you, Bryce. I go Tyler Boyd and Robert Woods, maybe Marvin Jones Jr. Because he could catch a couple jump ball touchdowns. And Eli Apple was given up on by 2 teams for a reason. I'm not a huge fan of Eli Apple. He's playing above his pay grade right now, which I'll absolutely take, and I love it. But it's kind of only a matter of time. So I'm taking Boyd and Woods.
So there you go. We all had differing opinions. The overlap was Tyler Boyd, and then your guess is as good as ours because we didn't agree completely. All right, so the end. Welcome. Hey, guys, is it wise to trade Dak and Fournette for Josh Allen? I would. I mean, I don't, it's Fournette doesn't really do anything exciting for me. Josh Allen, I'm a bigger fan of, but both of these guys are high-end QB1 type options, although Dak has not been performing. I think he's like a QB2 right now. And I even think Josh Allen might still be in the QB2 range, although he had a boom game last week.
Yeah, I think I think with the emergence of Tony Pollard, they're going to start leaning on that run game a little more, especially with the injury last year to Dak. They obviously know how important he is to that team and their success. And Josh Allen is, last week is – it can happen every single week, literally.
Right.
I think I do that. Absolutely.
What about you, Bryce? 2 out of 2 say yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's important to have running back depth. So I guess it could depending on my running back situation. But I like Josh Allen just in a vacuum in this trade. And the reason why is because the Cowboys are playing a lot better this year, right? We saw Dak super successful last year fantasy-wise because they were losing every game until the very end. They'd somewhat get it close, and Dak would have to throw the ball 50 times a game for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Well, Mike McCarthy, and we've seen it in the past, he wants to run a balanced offense, right? I mean, we saw him try and force Eddie Lacy to be good. It seems like right when he finally got a good running back in his coaching career in Green Bay, he ends up not sticking around, and Aaron Jones is finally there, but it's like Dallas Cowboys are going to copy their script for when they made they made it the NFC title game that year and lost, correct? And they were the most balanced team, right? They ran the ball as much as they threw it seemed like. And from what we've seen this year, it looks like they're going to copy that method. So I'm going to go with Josh Allen.
Their defense is better. Their offensive line is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
All right, so South Bay Raider has thoughts on CEH. So currently, CEH is like an RB3. You know, had a couple of double-digit games, but hasn't really done anything to write home about. Bryce, what do you think about CEH?
I think CEH is an average running back that's put in a situation to be a good running back when it comes to fantasy value. I think any running back is going to do well in Kansas City, just because you're never, ever going to see a stack box ever, except if you're on the 1 yard line. So if you have two legs, you're going to be able to run for 4 or 5 yards a carry. It seems like, I kind of projected. I'm not a CEH truther, but I think I said on Sunday that he was kind of almost due for a bounce back game. I still wasn't on him on a lot of the options who start this person over who. But CEH is just such a tremendous floor, and it wouldn't surprise you if he scored 2 touchdowns, because that offense has the ability to score 6 every game. Yeah. So that's kind of what I think about him. So
yeah. 2 out of 3 weeks with a fumble too.
Yeah. I don't think it's CEH, like you said. I don't think it's CEH that's doing this, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's not him, the running back. That's for sure. It's the system. It's the opportunity. He was overdrafted in the NFL draft. He was overdrafted in fantasy drafts. I thought that his 40 time would really hurt him more than he did. Like, realistically, he's very, very, very similar to Devin Singletary. I think you could take Devin Singletary, put him in this offense, and he would do just as well as CEH. Their stature wise is the same. 40 time was very similar. Everything is very, very, very similar. So, yeah, I mean, with opportunity, he's minimum RB2, but
RB2 is where I see him settling in at, as kind of an RB2 guy.
Yeah, and that's just because of opportunity and the team and coach he plays for.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Youngberg 4, welcome. It's nice to have you in the chat. So Terry, Hopkins, or Cooks? I'm assuming he's looking for who you're playing this week out of those guys.
I wish I had these problems. That's what I wish. Oh my gosh. I think I'm probably going to speak for all of us. It's Hopkins. I mean, it's just
start your studs.
Yeah. He's he's, if not the best, he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean, you have 2 studs when it comes to Terry and Hopkins, but Hopkins is a super stud. So
yeah, McLaurin's got a great matchup. But if you have to only start one of these 3, it's always going to be Hopkins for me, regardless of anything.
And they're all good plays. I mean, they're all guys that are going to get targeted pretty well in their offenses, and you just go with the stud. Probably the toughest question we're going to get all night: crunchy or smooth peanut butter? Cody?
I really like crunchy sometimes, but
same. It's like it depends on the mood I'm in.
Like crunchy.
In a vacuum, I'll say crunchy, but I got smooth with honey in my cupboard right now.
I'm smooth, but there's sometimes where I'm like, man, I wish I had some like texture to this sandwich. So crunchy sometimes, but smooth is what we buy.
If it's in a sandwich too, smooth is just a little easier. So.
Yeah.
My kids love crunchy, but I typically buy smooth as well. So smooth for the win.
It's a good change of pace.
All right, so boom, South Bay Raider again. Keep Debo or trade for redraft now that Ayuk is back in the picture. So what are we doing? Are we keeping him?
Last week when we were talking about that sort of a thing, Debo Samuel was a guy that I was saying to sell high on, because it's only a matter of time before Ayuk, the running game, Kittle, everything kind of gets back to normal type of a thing. So if you can still get that crazy value for Debo Samuel, I trade him. But if it slipped, and I mean, again, I don't know. We just said CEH or something for Debo and Chris Carson, those kinds of things. Like, I guess it depends on your team texture, but I look to trade him if I can get the value that I think might still be there, and definitely was last week.
Bryce?
Did you have any wrong takes last week?
I was actually pretty.
Seriously, I mean, like, I remember you saying all these things, and you're right. I think Debo's a guy that you got to get rid of if you can, because now it's like Ayuk, like you said, is back in the picture, and George Kittle just kind of had finally game for you. So yeah, it's this typical sell high on Debo. Go get guys like I mean, guys I've been targeting are guys like Jonathan Taylor. I mean, if you can try and go get Christian McCaffrey, if that owner's 1-2, I've got one in my league that's 0-3, and I've been sending everything I can to try and get him. So yeah, I'm trading him. Brad.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on your roster makeup. So is Debo a guy that you've been starting all these weeks? Well, if he is, then you probably don't have a lot going on behind him. I mean, if I'm starting a San Francisco receiver, I want to start Debo over Ayuk, even though I think Ayuk could give you some of the – I don't even want to say that. Debo's the guy on this offense at the wide receiver that I want to start. So if you're starting him and you have Ayuk back there, like I would look to trade Ayuk if Ayuk has a bounce back game, because we know what Debo's going to give you. Ayuk is still growing and still developing. The only concern, obviously, is Debo's had those injuries, last few seasons. But, it really depends on your roster makeup and what you can get for him. I mean, It's kind of a crappy answer. I'm sorry about that, but it is what it is. The response I would have, South Bay Raider, is make sure you jump into our Discord. If you do have Debo trade offers and those conversations going, you can go into our Discord chat and post, hey, this is my trade. This is what I got. This is my roster, and we can help you build a trade or get a trade done. We do it all the time. They're happening all the time on there, and Discord's free, so it's not like it costs you anything to jump in. So hopefully that helps. Young Bird, Ford, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Terry, Hopkins, Cook, start 3. You mean you're just going to win? Like, it doesn't matter who you start, you're winning.
Yeah, flex
So
spot.
this is a piggyback off his question earlier. That's why I asked Terry, Hopkins, or Cooks, because Adams and Kupp are. I mean, how?
Yeah,
you have fleeced your entire league. Like, I'm just going to say,
well, I would try. You need to go shopping for running backs if that's weak. I guess that's what I would be trying to do with Terry and Cooks.
I think you have to start Hopkins, Kupp, and Adams, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was thinking.
I'm shopping.
Right. Okay. Andrews, welcome. Hey guys, starting Debo and Sutton as my wide receiver 1-2. Who would you flex? Cooks, J-Rob, Pittman. Ooh. I think it's got to be James Robinson, right? Although Cooks, is going to get peppered with targets. Pittman is so good, but
I throw Cooks in for Sutton and start James Robinson as my flex. I go Debo, Cooks, J-Rob.
Yeah, I would do Debo, Sutton, and J-Rob. So J-Rob is the flex, at least at this point. Bryce for the win.
I'm going Debo, Cooks, and J-Rob. I mean, Sutton. If I need a really high ceiling, I'm probably going Sutton.
All this Sutton hate, you guys don't talk about him anymore. All right.
Yeah, true.
All right, Bill Arnold, drop Will Fuller for Brandon Ayuk.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that.
Jalen Waddle and Devontae Park. Will Fuller might be the number 3. I mean, Will Fuller might be the number 3 on that team behind Waddle and Parker at this point.
Mike Gesicki's looking better in the last few weeks too, and Gaskin catches a lot of balls. Even I do that for sure.
All right, PPR start Shenault, Ayuk, or Beasley. I think it's got to be Beasley, right? With all those targets and all that PPR action, right?
Yep.
Yeah, if you're starting one, it's got to be Beasley. Ayuk's got a good matchup.
I think Beasley's got the best floor and ceiling here.
Probably. Ayuk might have a higher ceiling just because he could.
Yeah, probably a little bit.
He's more touchdown prone than Beasley. But floor, Beasley for sure, without a question there.
I mean, Beasley's, target share so far, 13, 4, 13 each week. And,
So it means 4's coming up.
Yeah, it means 4 could be.
Yeah.
I mean,
4 was also.
The issue you run into is they've got the Texans next. So they're going to be running the ball because the Texans, they're going to get up on them early, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. It depends on like where you're at. You could go Ayuk. You could go Ayuk. I wouldn't do it like in a vacuum with what you have right this question. Who knows if you're starting guys on Thursday? I don't know. That could change things for me. But it's Shenault's out completely. If you need like a high, are they even afternoon games or anything? Ayuk's afternoon. Yeah, that's a tough one because Beasley's in the morning, Ayuk's in the afternoon.
Both afternoon for me.
I think you have to go Beasley just because of that PPR, but
Yeah.
know that this could be the 4 week, and then you're all right. So Daniel Alanis Jr., welcome, my friend. Fournette or Hubbard? So I'm assuming he's asking who we're starting this week, Fournette or Hubbard.
That's a good one.
I think it's Hubbard.
Yeah, I'm going.
Well,
Fournette.
why do you think Fournette?
Because like I said, I think Hubbard's that guy that we're picking him up for our waiver wire. We're excited because look what Christian McCaffrey does when he's in that backfield, but he's just a freak athlete. Hubbard is not going to do what Christian McCaffrey does. Fournette is outside of Bernard is the best pass catching back there. Bernard only comes in when it seems like they're down. And New England's weakest part of their defense is allowing running backs to have success. I said last week that Alvin Kamara is going. Well, I mean, I guess that's easy to say every week almost, but I think Alvin Kamara is going to be have a really good game. And it wasn't like super spectacular, but he scored a touchdown, relatively easy, relatively early. He was getting good amount of yards per carry early in the game, at least. I stopped watching after a while. So I can just see Fournette having early success and being a good guy that checks down because New England is going to focus on trying to stop Gronk, Godwin, Mike Evans, everybody. So, yeah, I would go Fournette.
Yeah, that's a good one. I actually probably go Chubba Hubbard as well. It's super, super, super close. I could see these guys finishing within like 2 points of each other. 2 fantasy points of each other.
The tough thing is if Fournette doesn't get passes his way, then he's not giving you much production right now. I mean, because he's only getting, 7 to 11 or 12 touches a game, and he's not really giving you a lot of rushing yards.
Yeah, this could be that situation too where they get to the 1 or 2 yard line, and since Brady's playing New England, they throw it. They want him to he wants those touchdowns against them. But I don't know. I think Hubbard gets more volume, and I think that's what you guys are saying his name for too. But I just see Fournette getting more value out of less touches.
Definitely no one do not think that you're getting anything near Christian McCaffrey with Chubba Hubbard because it's not even close. I
just think that's what people think when they grab like players off the waiver wire and they just immediately start them over players they shouldn't.
I think that a lot of people are going to fall for that this week with Chubba Hubbard and be like, oh, he's playing in that offense. He's going to catch 10 balls. And no, he's not.
Right.
No, he is not.
Right.
But like you said, with the being on the 1 or 2 yard line, I think they turn around and hand it off to 6'2", 220 Chubba Hubbard. And he could just vulture a touchdown. That's kind of where I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Ronald Jones is still the best runner on that team. Will he get an opportunity to carry the ball? I don't know. But
so there you go. 2 of us think Hubbard, 1 thinks Fournette. Good luck. Vertical Yeti, welcome. I don't know that I've seen you in the chat either, so I'm glad you're here. Who do I trade for? DJ Moore or Tyler Lockett? They're both so good. I think DJ Moore just because of the consistent targets, but Tyler Lockett's going to give you higher ceiling games. Like he can get you a 30, 35-point game where DJ Moore is really more of a floor play.
Yeah, that's super close as well. That one's super, super close. Realistically, I don't think you could actually go wrong.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either of those guys. I would go out and grab either of them. The only thing I was kind of wrong about last week was Tyler Lockett, but that whole offense just kind of fell apart. I'm not sure what's going on there. It looked like the end of last season in the second half of that game because the first half they looked great. And then Tyler Lockett took that big hit. So right this second, I would say DJ Moore because Tyler Lockett's kind of limited. That could change, and realistically, they're fairly interchangeable for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, same tier,
Bryce.
They're neck and neck. I personally like DJ Moore. I liked him a lot going into this season. I for some reason I just had a feeling that Robbie Anderson and Darnold wouldn't connect like they used to because DJ Moore's better. So DJ Moore gets looked at so much. I can see the Panthers in a lot of close games where they're passing a lot too. Just like the Seahawks, they seem like they always play up to their opponent or down to their opponent, right? So
well, and you got to love the amount of targets that North's getting. 8, 11,
yes,
12.
I mean,
he's catching a majority of them.
Yeah,
I'm concerned.
He was wide open too on all.
I'm
like
concerned. Most of those passes that he was wide open, which is what concerns me, is the play action. That's where he was catching a ton of wide open balls.
Mm-hmm.
Was in the play action game, and that's going to take a hit with Christian McCaffrey being out. So that was
just
super
a
close.
Temporary hit, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Same with Lockett. Like they're both. Yeah, they both have their pros and cons a little bit, but they're same tier and you can't go wrong. And realistically, I don't think anyone can say like this guy's going to do better with those two guys, right? It's way too close. So you can't go wrong with getting either guy in my opinion.
Currently both wide receiver 1, so it's not either way you go, it's a success. Yeah. All right, South Bay Raider wants to know CEH or Monty rest of season, and I'm fairly sure we're all going to say Monty, right?
I personally, I mean, I know the Bears' offensive line is horrible, but they have to somewhat establish a run game because Justin Fields has got to stay on the field. They have to start him. I know they're up in the air right now, and I don't know what they're up in the air about who's starting this upcoming week. They have to establish the run game. I know it's bad, but I just see Monty getting way more touches. I like him better as an athlete. He can still catch the ball out of the backfield, but I don't like that it's close because David Montgomery is just so much more talented than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's insane that this is as close as it is.
I 100% agree. He was way better. If you put David Montgomery on the Chiefs, he's one of the best running backs.
Yeah, top 3 probably.
He's one of the best running backs in the game. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was just saying, keep Monty.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Montgomery, but honestly, it's not that far away. Like CEH, they're still giving him the ball, even with all those fumbles. They're still giving him the ball, and they still believe in him. Like Kelsey and Mahomes both came out publicly and were cheerleading for CEH. So, like we said, just with the system and the team, I agree. I hate that it's close because skill wise, it's not at all.
Right,
but. Team, offensive line, offensive scheme. It's pretty close. It's super close.
Yeah. So there you go. Monty and Mick Douglas wants to know Rondale Moore or Christian Kirk with Arizona. Unfortunately, it depends on the week because they're going to keep.
Yeah.
I probably go Kirk. I really like Christian Kirk. I think that as far as snap count is concerned, AJ Green is getting the lion's share of the snaps with obviously DeAndre Hopkins. But Christian Kirk is number 3, and he's right there. They run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets, 4 wide receiver sets. He's shown, he can make that big play. Obviously, so can Rondale Moore. But I think like week to week floor, I go Kirk. But ceilings are the same basically.
And isn't Kirk leading the team in fantasy points? Like if you look at the Arizona right now.
Yeah, he's had some big weeks. Did he have two touchdown games or just the one and then a 1 touchdown game? Right?
No, he's only had 2 touchdowns and that was in week 1. But last week he did catch 7 for 104. I mean he's catching everything thrown his way. He's only missed 2 passes so far out of 17. So
I think he's super underrated. I was coming into the season saying he's the wide receiver 2 on that team over AJ Green. I think he's criminally underrated a little bit. He's a very, very good wide receiver, and he has a little bit of chemistry with Kyler Murray, I think. So floor-wise, Kirk for sure. And
what about you, Bryce?
Yeah.
I mean, Kirk and AJ Green are kind of underrated, right? They both kind of produced in all their games, somewhat in all their games this year, a majority of them. So I agree. Kirk for floor, ceilings are relatively close. Moore might have the edge a little bit.
There you go. 3 for 3, go with Kirk. All right, our boy CXK, always good to see you, my friend. Should I start Ruggs or Rondale Moore this week? I would say Ruggs.
Yeah. He's on the field way more, just has the same explosive ability as Rondale Moore.
Yeah, both are probably going to be shootout games, I think. Both these guys, I think, return punts and or kicks. I'm not sure about Rondale Moore completely, but so they could pitch in there if you get those return yards. If not, they could just kick. Like Henry Ruggs could take one to the house anytime he touches the football. So I go Henry Ruggs as well.
Okay. Daniel Lannis Jr., welcome back again. Jamar Chase or Scary Terry? PPR, my other 2 are Keenan Allen and Hopkins. I'd probably go with
another like That's a great problem.
That is,
I can see how people have this, because a lot of people don't like, especially in redraft, don't like to take rookies super early sometimes.
Plus, a lot of guys are scared of Hopkins for some reason and Keenan Allen for some reason. Yeah.
I'm not benching Jamar Chase at this point. I mean, he's been. I like 3 weeks is usually where I see like, okay, these are trends. 2 weeks in a row that could be a coincidence, but 3 weeks now we're seeing consistency, and I'm going to go with consistency. I like Scary Terry is just one of my favorite wide receivers to watch, but his quarterback play is by far the worst out of all these guys. So I'm going Jamar Chase.
And if Antonio Gibson had do factor type of thing last week, it's right there, if not higher this week.
Yeah.
So and JD McKissick, I'm going the same route. I'm going to Jamar Chase.
I'd be looking to find some running back depth with that wide receiver core.
Yep. All right. CXK asks another question. What's a good price for Elijah Moore in a dynasty super play? So I'm assuming if you're selling Elijah Moore, what are you asking for? You probably paid an early second for him when you drafted him. So I'm not selling him cheap yet because, well, you just drafted him. So in my mind, I don't, I say if you're buying him, you have to spend at least a second and probably a little more because the guy spent a second on him and he liked him.
Yeah.
Maybe
I can
even
see why people would buy, honestly.
Oh, no, not Superflex. Never mind. But
yeah, I could see why people would buy. I would pay a second for Elijah Moore for sure. I don't know if I'd sell for a second though.
Yeah,
so
I would want more than a second to sell.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't think I'd be selling on that. I think I'd just be waiting to see. They seem to have rapport. Zach Wilson, he's a rookie, he looks good. Hopefully Zach Wilson does get there eventually. That offensive line should be better next year probably.
And we do, and we actually have to revise our Andrus take. He said he was looking for 2 flex plays. So after J-Rob and Sutton or Pittman, and if J-Rob flops, what about Terrace Marshall? So, let me find his original question up here.
Cooks and there you
go. So Debo Sutton, and then it says pick 2. Pick 2.
We're idiots.
Sorry. All right,
Cooks and J-Rob.
Cooks and J-Rob.
Easy. For
now,
sure.
I think we all agree now.
If J-Rob flops, you could swing for the fences with Terrace Marshall. If J-Rob flops.
All right. Fran Moore, welcome. Do I trade Thielen for Julio and Andrews? I have A.J. Brown, Cooper, and Tanya. No, I hold on to Julio.
I wouldn't want Julio and A.J. Brown. No, probably not.
I mean, unless you need tight end help, which you don't. You got Tanya. No, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think you're fine with what you got.
Keep going with what you got.
And with Julio and AJ, they're you don't want both those guys that are very injury prone at this point.
All right, Tucker Esty, welcome, my friend. CMC owner here. Should I start Alexander Madison, Sony Michel, Michael Carter, Peyton Barber, or Kenneth Gainwell?
Dalvin Cook practice limited today.
Yeah, Cook is going to play if he's even close to healthy. Darrell Henderson, I don't think's practiced yet, has he?
He practiced limited today as well.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say all the running backs are hurt that are ahead of Madison, Sony.
Well, I think Josh Jacobs is still out, so isn't Peyton Barber the play then?
We haven't seen any practice from the Raiders yet because they play Monday night. But I probably wouldn't. I don't know if I would trust Josh Jacobs either way with his health. And look at what Peyton Barber did last week. So they're going to give him touches. That's really close. I mean, if Darrell Henderson isn't playing, which I think is probably the most likely candidate to not play, I go Sony Michel.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say if Cook and Darrell Henderson are hurt and Josh Jacobs, I'm probably still going Sony Michel. He got 20 carries.
Yeah. And he looks good in that offense.
Yeah. And that was, he did a great job blocking too. And people might think that doesn't mean much, but that means they can put you on clearly passing downs. You can be out there. So
especially on that team, it means a ton.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. All right. So Michael Brantley, should I start CEH or James Robinson this week? James Robinson's against Cincy, who's pretty solid against the run. CEH
is Philly. I'd probably go CEH.
He's also good against the run. I mean, usually You would
Yeah,
think that's last week they got mauled, but
Yeah. Monday was
prior to
like-
that.
it's similar against similar offenses, right? That's why I would go CEH because, similar offenses between the Cowboys. They got to be, responsible for a lot of pass catchers. They're not going to stack the box. I think, and I think they're a little banged up. Fletcher Cox.
Yeah, I'd probably go
Hubbard, I think.
CEH as well for sure.
Yeah, I go CEH.
But either one is a good play.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Tony Snow, welcome, my friend. Hi, guys. Should I pick up AJ Green or Tim Patrick from the waiver wire? I would say Tim Patrick for sure. What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, I'm taking Tim Patrick.
I'd say yes to both realistically, but I really like Tim Patrick too as well. I think he's the guy over. I know you like Cortland Sutton, but I really like Tim Patrick. I think he's super, super underrated.
And Jaws, I would say if somebody's interested in Marlon Mack and he gets traded, do it. Whatever you can get.
You probably won't get max value until he gets traded. So
and you won't get max value until you see where he gets traded to, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know what team would pick him up at this point.
Oh, he's super talented if somebody picks him up, but
just trying to think of somebody who needs.
I was saying the Kansas City Chiefs in the chat last night. So.
Last night I said New England needing that pass catching back with James White down, and then Cody said Kansas City, and I think I don't remember the other ones that were thrown around.
Carolina, I think, was thrown out there. 49ers.
Yeah.
Niners would be probably smart.
Yeah,
makes a muddier situation even more muddy.
Yeah. I stay away from that. I stay away from it if I can at this point.
Yeah. All right, Ariel Lorena, welcome. What do you think of Cup for Ridley and Ruggs? Oh, I love Ridley.
I don't like it for redraft, but for Dynasty, I would do that.
Yeah, in Dynasty for sure.
I would do that, but redraft, I'm not.
Cup
has got Devontae. Cup is like Devontae Adams last year at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, Dynasty, pull the trigger, redraft. Cup is just too valuable.
Absolutely.
He's averaging 30 points.
He is. He's on fire, and Stafford loves to target him, and teams can't stop it. I mean, look at people are targeting him.
If we're out of questions, I got a trade that I made today to throw at you guys.
Yeah.
All right, we'll finish with you. What do you got?
So I'm the number one point scorer in the league. I'm 2-1, but I have the most points. Christian McCaffrey obviously just went down. I'm not going to say who I own. Actually, I'm not going to say who I own. I'll tell you the trade. Christian McCaffrey for Najee Harris and Zach Moss. Which side do you take?
Christian McCaffrey.
I'll 16 team, full point PPR.
Christian McCaffrey.
And Zach Moss. I traded Najee Harris. And I got Christian McCaffrey and Zach Moss.
Oh wait, you just traded Najee for those two. I thought you traded
that's crazy.
Najee and Moss.
That's crazy. That's a great one.
That's easy. I mean, that's perfect on selling high on a 1 week thing. I mean, Najee might have the most receptions out of running backs this year, but that's Christian McCaffrey.
Well done by you, because that was great. And now we have a couple of more questions that popped in, so let's get these and then we'll wrap it up. Looking to trade for Chase Edmonds. I have Rodgers, Eckler, Mitchell, Drake, Pollard, Sermon, Tyson, Tyreek, McLaren, Thielen, all these different guys. If you're trading for Chase Edmonds, I don't think that you can dangle half these guys out there. In a redraft sense, I think you have to try to dangle out somebody that's got a name recognition, A-Rob or McLaren. But I don't know that
if you could do like Sermon and Tyson, I would do that. Looks like you do kind of need a running back. I mean, Eli Mitchell, and Drake.
You got five wide receivers. If you sent out Ayuk and Sermon or Tyson, I mean, I just don't ever see Ayuk making it into your starting lineup over any of those other guys.
And he has Edmonds, Monty, Gordon, Sanders, Singletary. So he's got plenty of running backs. A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Chark, Devon. Man, but he doesn't need wide receiver or tight end. So I think you have to give him something that's going to make him want to trade. So I think you have to offer him,
unless there's a trade on the table, you might.
I think you're going to get stuck having to offer, either A-Rob or McLaren, and I don't know.
I wouldn't get rid of either of them.
In a redraft, I wouldn't want to trade either of those. So I would come in with something like Ayuk and,
Tyson
or Sermon, and have that conversation with them. But I'm definitely not trading your big name players because, those are pieces that you need.
No, Pollard's relatively close enough to Chase Edmonds that you don't need to get desperate. So
right.
Yeah. I wouldn't go too crazy. All right, last question from Stephen X. Welcome to the chat, my friend. Chris Carson or James Robinson in PPR? Chris Carson for me.
Full season? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
even if it's
I'm one of those guys
this week,
Yeah, I'm one of those guys big on James Robinson. I struggled choosing CEH over him even for tomorrow's game just because I just feel like at this point he could be a PPR monster. I'm gonna go Chris Carson, but that could easily change. I want to watch how they use him since I'll actually get to watch the game. I want to watch and see how Urban Meyer uses Chris.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on James Robinson too, but that's
Chris Carson.
Chris Carson for sure.
With Pete Carroll, he's another guy who's stuck in the mud. So,
and are you guys keeping or dropping Tyson Williams? I'm keeping him. He looks like the best back on the roster of the guys that are there. He just isn't getting as they're still divvying it up too much. What about you, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens' backfield is almost at this point become like the 49ers, where it's I don't feel really comfortable starting anybody at this point. I wasn't big on Tyson anyway from the start of the season, but I'm going to keep him unless there's something for some reason better out there.
Yeah, I think if anything, just try to trade him. Don't just drop him. He should have some sort of value, at least in a package or something like that. Try to trade him before you just outright drop him. A lot of times guys don't think about that sort of thing either. It's I need to drop a guy. Trade and clear out a roster spot, something like that. So
for sure. That's it, folks. Thank you guys for making the chat amazing tonight. As always, you guys are amazing. Smash that like, the subscribe, the notification icon. Let's get this channel up to 3,000. We're getting close, and it's all because of you guys. Don't forget, Sunday morning, you be back here with Bryce, Rick, and I don't even know who your special guest this week is, but be back here with the Boomer Bust guys, and you can talk start sit, just before that slate of games. You can see the three of us again next Wednesday, next Tuesday night. It's me, Sully, and Anthony. And thank you guys. We will see you later.
Everything's on fire.